Welcome to the Visually Hidden Selects podcast, where we discuss an independent approach to the art of cinema and explore the subtext of various featured films. My name is Peter O'Brien, and I am an independent filmmaker, author, and musician.
My name is David Bendler. I'm a film and stage actor and a pop culture enthusiast.
I'm Anne Milleville, a French screenwriter and producer.
Today's VHS selection is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest from 1975, directed by Milos Forman and starring Jack Nicholson, Louise, Fletcher, and one of the greatest character actor ensembles I've ever seen, and I think you're likely to encounter. If you have not seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, please pause the podcast and head over to the Visually Hidden YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future selections, and then come on back to the podcast. We will be discussing it in depth at length, filled with spoilers. Here we go. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. This is a legendary movie. I mean, mostly because of its award pedigree has really kind of sustained it throughout the years, where it's people keep coming back to it because they want to see, how did this film win all of these awards? What's so special about this film? And then you watch it and you find out. But for me, I think I first encountered it, I think it was actually through The Simpsons. They were making jokes and references to the film, and I kind of just put it together like, oh, that's that movie One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, because I had seen it on the video store shelf, and I'd heard about it through members of my family. But my first real encounter was Stark Raving Dad, season 3, episode 1, where Homer Simpson goes into the mental institution, and some echoes of Cuckoo's Nest going on in that episode. So that was where I first kind of encountered it. And then when I was in junior high, I got really into Jack Nicholson. When I was in like 7th and 8th grade, I watched One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, The Shining, and Easy Rider, like on rotation for quite a few weeks. I just studied these films of Jack, because I mean, I knew him as the Joker from Batman 89, and of course he was in a number of things throughout the 90s that I was aware of, Few Good Men and Wolf and things like that. But really, it was Cuckoo's Nest, The Shining, and Easy Rider that really kind of attracted me to Jack, more so than Mars Attacks.
Hey, you don't like Mars Attacks?
Well, I don't not like it, but I think it has its place, and it's not with Cuckoo's Nest, The Shining, or Easy Rider.
Fair enough.
And then from there, it was just kind of like that was the gateway, and I was like in the house of Jack, studying at the feet of the master. And so Cuckoo's Nest really just is top notch, I think. And not just because of Jack. I mean, of course, he's the star, but there's so much involved in this film, from the story and the setting and the themes and the characters, the supporting cast.
Once again, a legendary movie I didn't know. I heard about it. It's really popular here, but I haven't watched it before. So, first time watching it. It was one of my father's favorite movies, so I was curious about it, but I never had the occasion to watch it. We didn't have the VHS at home or the DVD, so he told me a lot about it. I think he was a huge fan of, maybe not a fan, but he admired Jack Nicholson works, and he told me that this movie had so many Oscars that I should have a look at it. So now it's done, never too late. And I was really surprised about the acting performance, in a good way, of course, and that this movie has several unexpected twists. I was really surprised watching it. Sometimes I didn't expect what happened. So, and I was really intrigued about the title, Cuckoo's Nest. I thought it was about birds or something like that. So when the movie started in a hospital, I was like, okay, it's not what I expected, because I really didn't know what the movie was about. So it was a surprise from the beginning to the end. So I didn't know anything. It just told me, you should watch it. It's a fabulous movie. Jack Nicholson is mind-blowing in it. So he was always saying that.
Very, very smart man. I don't throw this term around too often, but this is a perfect example of a beautiful movie. It's just a beautiful story from start to finish, and it's a beautifully executed film as well.
I think this was another one of those that I saw in high school. I kind of went on a crusade during the later part of high school to go back and watch all of these old dramatic films that I heard so much about but had never seen. Because growing up, I was mostly watching comedies or horror movies. That's kind of like where it laid, and I wasn't really interested in drama so much. But the first time I saw this, man, I was blown away by it, emotionally invested in it, in the whole story. But yeah, but it's one of those, like, you say you walk in the video store and you see Jack looking up, with the fence behind him, and that's one of those images, like, I gotta see that one day, and I finally did, and I love this movie. It stuck with me well after I watched it. Heartbreaking, but the performances are so solid across the board. There's a really fine line between some of the dark comedy and some of the drama. You have to, that you could walk with this stuff. And so some of the jokes or some of the little interactions between the patients and Jack, I find hilarious, but some people might not find those hilarious. But I have a darker sense of humor than most people. So just some of the reactions and the off the cuff things he says when he looks at some of these people, just hilarious to me. But it's a good representation of life, right? Drama and comedy, just a hair between them, and something could be, really, someone falls down the stairs and is just laying there, you can crack up. Someone falls down the stairs and dies. Well, that's not so funny. So it just depends on how you look at it, right?
And I like the intensity in those scenes. Because, for example, when they vote for the baseball play, it's crazy because you have so much hope that it's going to have the last vote. And you're so happy when it happens. And suddenly, no, she says no.
Mm-hmm.
And you like, so it's always up and down, even as the audience, when you watch it, you're really into it. Even when he tries to lift up the sink, he won't succeed. It's quite obvious it won't work. But you have hope for this guy, and yeah, I don't know, it's always up and down. The face of Jack Nicholson, sometimes it's just his face is funny. I wonder if you feel that way too. Sometimes just with his face, it starts to be amusing, while the scene wasn't really. So you have lots of complexity in the script about the drama and the comedy, but also with the acting performances. They're always on a thin line, and suddenly, just because he moves an eye, it starts to be funny.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is, like, with just the way the story unfolds, and it's like there's an escalation and there's a progression throughout this entire film. And you would think, like, the way Jack shows up, and once they take the cuffs off and he's like, woo woo, jumping around and hugging and kissing, and it's like, oh wow, he's already there. But like, the film, it just increases from there. And so that one scene where they're voting on watching the World Series, but that first scene where he like completely loses the vote sets up that triumph when the chief raises his hand, and then Nurse Ratched, she can't condone it, so she doesn't let him have it. Like, that victory is not for him, and then the way they set up the sink or the water fountain with Jack trying to do it, and then at the end when the chief does it, it's like, yes, like at the end of this movie, as sad and as tragic, and like as like this is a movie that like makes me cry. Like if I'm watching it, it's like the right time of day and I've had the right kind of day, like this movie will hit me like a ton of bricks. But at the end of this movie, when that sink hits that window, I'm like Tabor, I'm just like hooting and hollering that the chief fucking did it,
Yeah. Well, full disclosure, I have a problem with authority. I just, as a person, I really do. You can't tell me.
Welcome to the
You
club.
can't tell me I have to do something because it's fuck off, right? So watching this film the first time is extremely hard for me to get through because I just wanted to choke Nurse Ratched. And then when he actually does, I'm like, fucking yeah, get her, like it's like you like vicariously, I'm like, choke her, and then it's like there's no nice way to say this. She's such a bitch, and the amount of control that she feels she needs to wield over these people. There's moments when he's being playful with Nurse Ratched and being cordial and okay, all right, I'll play by the rules, and then she does one cunty thing to him, and he's like, oh, okay, that's how you want to play
Mhm.
this fucking hand. Okay, and then like let's reshuffle and let's go again. It's almost like she's antagonizing him because she wants to lay the hammer down on him. That's the vibe I always got from her, even in reviewings, is like she wants to see this guy suffer.
This whole movie is really one big chess
Mm-hmm.
game between Jack and Nurse Ratched, and everybody else are the pieces that
Yeah.
they're moving around, or they're capturing or recapturing. Like that's kind of how I look at, she does this, he does
Mm-hmm.
that. She does this, he does that, and they just go round and round until finally she gets him in a checkmate.
Mm-hmm.
But I do love the entrance interview, I guess you could say, with Dr. Spivey. It's like, well, as near as I can figure it, Doc, I fight and I fuck too much. Rocky Marciano, he has 50 fights, and he's world champ.
Yeah.
But the interview is great because during the interview, you're wondering if he has a mental disease or if it's just, a smart guy taking it easy. You really don't know. And I love his expression on this interview. It's really on the edge of madness or just being fun. So I don't know. It's really a great performance. Just the first interview. It's really at the beginning of the movie, and you understand that you're gonna watch something great.
As great as Jack is and everything, I do feel that the supporting cast just gives him everything he needs to get where he has to go. And I know, speaking from experience, like whenever I've acted or worked with other actors, like if I'm the weak link, I'm stronger because they're better. And that's how it works. And so when you get a room with Christopher Lloyd and Danny DeVito and William Redfield and Vincent Scavelli and all these guys and Jack Nicholson and fucking Brad Dourif out of the gate,
Mm-hmm.
First show, nailing it. And there's nowhere you could possibly go except up with that kind of support.
And I've met Brad Dourif. He's a super nice guy. Back to Martini for a second. The first time I saw that, Danny DeVito's adorable in that movie, man. The smile, just the little squinting that he does. He's just, it's like a happy little elf, in that movie. He's just so, just as an actor, over like his whole body of work, what a versatile guy. Even like in something like so crazy as Throw Mama from the Train, he has those tender moments in there where he's really talking about his situation, or reminiscing about his dad, and he just has these great moments where he really makes you feel for him, and then he can be completely despicable, like in Death to Smoochie or something like that, or completely off the wall in Batman Returns. So like just to see the origins of him here, guy's stellar always.
He played Martini in the 1971 Broadway revival, so he's clearly like a strong addition to the cast. This is kind of where like the world really first met Danny DeVito. I mean, he had been in a couple of other things, and then from here he goes on to play Louis De Palma in Taxi, which is one of the most despicable characters ever conceived of. But he also still has like those tender moments and like those moments of like real heart. Not everybody could do that. And Danny DeVito just has something tremendously special that is spotlighted in this. And then I'm so happy that we got to take the ride with him.
Absolutely. And then his Taxi co-star Christopher Lloyd, who I have met and adore and can't say enough good things about, and everything he does is, for me, is magic. That's a whole nother guy where I could talk about him for a whole podcast. Just the career that guy's had, Doc Brown, Uncle Fester, it's just insane.
And this is the beginning of his filmography. He had done theater and stuff, but this is really, again, his first film, and the film was shot 50 years ago.
It's crazy.
Like we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of this film, and a lot of these guys are still around and they're still working and they're still fantastic. But it's just bananas when you think about it. I always like Cheswick.
He's phenomenal because I really feel when he's like, I want my cigarettes. Wait, you feel his pain and you totally get him.
And then when it's revealed that they're all primarily there voluntarily.
That's crazy.
Like Jack goes around, it's like, you.
This scene is incredible.
I love when he says to Billy, "You should be bird dogging chicks and banging beaver. What are you doing in here?"
Yeah, Brad Dourif in this movie is just so good.
That he didn't win Best Supporting Actor really is just it's the politics of the Academy at work right there, because they probably figured, oh, Brad Dourif, he's young, he's talented, we'll see him again. Let's give it to George Burns. He came all the way out of retirement. We don't know how much longer we're gonna have him. Let's give
Oh,
him.
George Burns went for the Sunshine Boys.
Yeah, and
Which
it's not bad.
I love that movie.
It's not bad, but I'm rewatching Cuckoo's Nest more than I am Sunshine Boys. And I am studying Brad Dourif more than I am George Burns.
Yeah, I mean, I love the Sunshine Boys, but yeah, no, I think that this performance, obviously, that's where it should have went. Should have went to Brad Dourif, because he is phenomenal in this movie, and he, like, when you see Billy's fate, so heartbreaking, and right there, like, if the stuff you could even say and argue, hey, you know what, the stuff between Nurse Ratched and McMurphy, debatable. There's no debate that she's a sick, twisted son of a bitch when it comes to how she manipulates Billy in his final moments, and then where he ends up. That was when I first saw that scene, what a fucking kick to the stomach that was. That was brutal.
And so unexpected. You really don't expect that he's gonna do that. So yeah, once again, a surprising twist, And I'm not sure if you felt the same way about him, but just after he had sex, I feel like when he talks, he doesn't stutter anymore. Is that just me, or you felt the same way?
No, totally. And I think that's a big part of it is he it's his stutter is partially because of his lack of confidence, and Nurse Ratched is constantly like holding that cloud over him and that threat of his mother. And so Nurse Ratched and his mother are just like vampires, like sucking his life force out of him. And McMurphy, he realizes this, he understands, he knows. And so he's like, this kid needs like an older brother or like a strong male figure in his life. And he sets him up with Candy, who seems just dandy. And they have their night, and yeah, Billy, like after that, he probably feels like a man for the first time in his life, or like a strong person.
Yeah.
And you can see it. And that's part of the brilliance that Brad Dourif does in this performance is like a switch. Once she says mother, that's like his, ringing the bell. That's his response. He just, no, it was McMurphy, and she knows it, and she plays that card right in front of everybody.
That's why Jack should have killed her, choked her to death. I get bloodthirsty when I watch this one. I'm sorry. You can't deny that when he fucking chokes her, it feels great.
And now a word from our sponsor.
This podcast is brought to you by Visually Hidden Selects. If you're looking for a spoiler-free recommendation of a classic film with professional analysis and insight, check out Visually Hidden Selects, exclusively on the Visually Hidden YouTube channel.
About Billy's end, I'm sure you're gonna strongly disagree on that, but I was a bit disappointed that the movie doesn't end at that moment, because I think it would have been so powerful, when McMurphy and the chief are about to escape, and suddenly you hear screaming, just to have a shot on McMurphy's face, like he understands what happened, but he has the occasion to go away with the chief, and he does it. It would have been so powerful to end the movie this way. I don't know. I was a bit frustrated when the movie didn't end at that point. I was like, oh, the end would have been so great to see McMurphy and the chief escaping just after Billy's hand. I'm pretty sure you don't agree with me, but yeah, I wanted to share with you my impression.
No, and I can understand that. I'd be curious to hear if you still felt that way, like on a rewatch or like a few years down the line after letting it sit, and like mull it over, because really that is that's the happy ending. Really,
Yeah,
is
definitely.
McMurphy getting, not Billy dying, but but McMurphy getting away
Mhm.
is, it's something like, yeah, no, that's, yeah, go, like, and it still has that kind of tragic tie with Billy where it's like, oh, fuck, I wasn't there for him, but now I'm free. Like
Yeah.
there's that element, but I feel like, and again, because the story is told from the chief's point of view in the book, and that's the origin of it, it's like the chief is the one who flew over the cuckoo's nest. It's not Jack. It's the chief, because he's the one who gets away.
Right.
And so it's the chief's story.
I will say this about a rewatch. When I first watched it, 'cause I've seen it a few times, but when I first ever saw it, I was so infuriated by Nurse Ratched and what she did with Billy, and then that would
When aren't you infuriated, Steve? Let's have that conversation.
that's my secret, Pete. I'm always angry. But I was so infuriated with her behavior that when he strangles her, I was like, fucking yeah, get it feels good. Watching it this
Get
time,
some.
when he strangles her, it still feels good, but in my head, I'm like, oh, don't do it. And that comes with age, and that comes with wisdom, and like she's gonna win. Obviously you're fucked if you do it, because now there's gonna be charges, or you're gonna be locked up for sure. But then there's also the the pettiness that I have in me that's like, don't give her the fucking satisfaction, and don't let her win this game. But he's just so overcome, I guess, with grief and with just frustration of how she is, that he just couldn't help himself. So it's but again, I'm not going to say it didn't feel good when he was doing it, but there was that part of me, and I was like, don't do it, don't give her the satisfaction, McMurphy. But it goes the way that it goes, and when that reveal comes, him laying in the bed and the chief looking at him, and he sees, oh man, first time I saw that, broke my heart into pieces. Just
Oh yeah, I'm still putting the pieces back together.
It's brutal
from when I was like 13.
It's just a brutal thing.
Like and but again, I love how the film and the story unfolds and builds. And so like when he comes back from the electric shock and he's like, playing like, like
Frankenstein.
he's been lobotomized, zombified. Yeah. And then he winks at the chief, and then he reveals to everybody. And it's like, you think he's maybe doing it again, but then the chief rolls him over and you just see that horseshoe in his skull. And it's like, oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Like all the wind comes out of your sails.
Yeah, it's like just to see.
And you're right there. You're right there on the edge of the bed with the chief, and like you couldn't be more connected to a character if you were that character at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's to see such a clear, distinct difference between how vibrant and lively McMurphy is upon his arrival and his whole stay in the hospital, and then to see all the life just gone from him, and how Nurse Ratched kind of fucking whittled him down and sucked the will out of him, and just removed a piece of him, and then just now he's just nothing. It's brutal.
You can really see it in the scene when he's pretending to watch the baseball game and he's rallying everybody and they're all cheering and hooting and hollering, and then they just have that like push in close up of Nurse Ratched, and you can just see like the fire behind her eyes, like, I'm gonna burn that motherfucker down.
Well, she doesn't, like he says, she doesn't play fair. She the whole situation, well, if you get the vote, well, it's after time, and you had no intention of even if you did get the vote on the first try, you had no intention of doing it. So, which I think is a shitty way to go on, especially if you're supposed to be there for these people's health and mental well-being. You're not playing exactly fair.
Yeah, I kind of disagree on the image you have about the Nurse Ratched. You're gonna hate me for what I'm about to say, but the impression we have about her is through the perspective of the patients. And when you think about it, she's a woman in the 60s. I think it takes place in the 60s. And she has to control men, which is quite surprising to have a woman at the head of such a a men area. I was surprised that she was the one in charge of all these guys alone, but and the one who assists her is a woman again. So maybe she needs, to be a badass, to have authority. And okay, she goes too far. We agree on that. But I kind of, I feel bad for her sometimes. And you have so many close-ups on her. Quite every time she's in a scene, you have a very intense close-up on her. So I think maybe, maybe because I'm a woman, I don't know, but maybe those close-ups is to let us have another perspective, to think that maybe she's doing it on purpose, but not for being mean, but because she needs to have authority to those guys. And imagine you have a guy like Mike Murphy. Steve, you were Pete, you were a teacher. So imagine you have kind of a troublemaker like that in your class. You have to be more kind of rigid, you know what I'm saying? So it's complicated for her to have this kind of personality in a group.
I know what you're saying, but at the end of the day, she still has that relationship with Billy.
Yeah, that's true.
And Billy
Just for
meets a
Billy,
cruel
okay.
and unjust fate because of her. And it's not just Billy, but Billy's like the shining example there, and that Billy's the one that kind of counters the argument you just presented.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
if she really cared about Billy, she would be helping him, and she'd be helping the other men, and then they wouldn't be there. They would move on with their lives.
Just the parameters of the deal about the baseball game. You have to have the majority, and he's assuming it's the majority of who's in the circle, because the other people aren't in the circle because they're just vegetables, basically. If they were coherent enough, they would be in the group circle. So that's a mind game she's playing with McMurphy right off the bat. And he says, "Oh, we got the majority. Let's put the ball game on." No, it's not good for the boys. It's not good for the men. The ones who are running
I
around and getting into fights with them, they get into fights with themselves over anything before McMurphy's even involved. They're arguing with each other over games and whatnot. So they're already excitable. So if they watch a baseball game, who cares? But it's just the way she plays. She gets off on the power. Interestingly enough, we did two movies back to back where you've got Bender and McMurphy who are very similar, and you've got Vice Principal Vernon and Nurse Ratched who are very similar. It's an interesting.
Yeah, and I
I think
think
we're
you
going
were
deep into
more
Pete's psyche.
yeah, I think you were nicer with the teacher in the Breakfast Club than to Nurse Ratched here, because in a way I understand what you say, and I agree. I don't like this character. That's fine, but maybe she became a bit greedy about the small power she can get from her position, and that's the same in the Breakfast
Sure.
Club. The teacher, it's the same thing for me. It's the same type of characters. And I don't know, I feel bad for her in a way. And when she talks to the doctors about Mike Murphy's situation, there is a meeting at some point about his situation, and the other doctors,
Yeah.
they seem to look for her opinion. So she has a position that shows she's committed to her mission.
Yeah, but at the same time, those men are essentially saying like, "Hey, you know what? I don't know that he actually belongs here." And what does she do? She says, "No, let's keep him.
Yeah.
We can help him." She's the spider who wants McMurphy in her web so she can control another person and she can break his spirit. And you can see it in her face how subtle the performance is. It's unreal, but she was the one who kept him there. She was the one who took away his freedom, and then it's revealed like, "Oh yeah, you're not going anywhere, bub. You gotta finish your time after you're done here." Like, and she knows that.
Yeah.
She's the one who really fucks him over, and that's because she is evil and manipulative and diabolic.
Well, yeah, I felt the same exact way with that specific scene. You can see it in her eyes. It's a personal vendetta. no, this is not over. I want this guy here because I'm going to break him. That's how I took it, at least.
It's a theory. I don't know. Maybe it's a revenge story because she knows the girl that McMurphy's assaulted and she wants to make him pay for that. I don't know. Just a crazy theory.
We got some fan fiction. And you might be onto something in the sense that maybe at one point in time when she got that job, she felt she had to exert a little more force because she's a woman. But I think over time, she got drunk with that power and became this evil thing.
I agree. According to the American Film Institute, Nurse Ratched is rated the 5th baddest villain in film history.
I do not disagree with that at all. Like I said in the VHS, she is one of the most underrated villains in film history. Like she is just, and the performance, like that's really what it is that's making us so like angry, and like have all these emotions. Is like Louise Fletcher is so good, and she of course won the Oscar as well, and deservedly so. I mean, she's just fantastic at like inspiring controversy and emotion with this performance, because it can be read either way, and depending upon what you want to see, you're going to see what you want to see. Like is she helping or is she hurting?
About the chief, I don't know if this actor is well known in America. I didn't know this actor before, and I'm not remembering any movie with him, but maybe I have a bad memory. But this guy is built like a house. I mean, he's so big. It's wow. He looks phenomenal. I mean,
the chief is played by Will Sampson, who passed away in the mid to late 80s. This, I believe, is also his first real film. He had been in something else around the same time, but I believe this was his first thing, and then he just kind of developed from there. I think he was like a park ranger in Oregon where they were filming, and he just wound up catching somebody's attention, and then they cast him because who the fuck else is going to play a 7-foot-tall Indian? Let's be real here. Yeah. But he does a great job. And then from here, he just spun off a career that, included The Outlaw Josie Wales, Poltergeist 2, and he passed away shortly after Poltergeist 2. So he's part of the whole Poltergeist curse.
I mean, I think what the legacy of this film is humanity overall. I think about enjoying your life, inspiring others to enjoy their life, to take pleasure in the small things. And sometimes those things might seem crazy to other people. It's a story for me about humanity and about life. I think that's why it probably endures.
I think there's two things at play here. There's the story, and then there's the film. And while they go together to make what we're talking about, I feel like they are two different things. And so the story has its moral and has its points and its themes. And like you just said, humanity is a big one, and conformity as well, and individualism. Those are all elements that play into this story, and it's a commentary and a criticism of those elements in our society, but also the film as a film and as like an example of the art form of filmmaking. I think it has its own separate legacy from the story, and that it was really a small movie. Yeah. It wasn't this huge, big blockbuster thing. And it's just, it just shows what you can accomplish when you get the right people involved and you see it through, because Kirk Douglas, he owned the rights and he tried to get this movie made for like 10 years. And then he was too old to play McMurphy. And so Michael Douglas, who was kind of a television actor, he wanted to be a producer, though. He got the rights from his father and he saw it through and he got it done.
About Kirk Douglas not able to make the film, do you know what was the main difficulties he faced regarding that matter? I mean, I'm surprised he couldn't do it, really.
Yeah, he purchased the story rights, so he owned the rights to make the film, and he couldn't get a studio behind it to support it, even though it was successful as a play and successful as a novel. They
were reluctant to talk about something like that.
I think they were reluctant to go with the ending as is. It's like, oh well, if Jack Nicholson lives, yeah, we'll make the movie. And so to stick to the guns of the story, like, yeah, no, this is the story and this is the movie we want to make and this is the story we want to tell. And they're like, oh, well, then we can't help you because we don't feel confident that that is going to sell to audiences. And we don't feel confident that it's going to have good word of mouth return, for our investment. So well done, Michael Douglas.
There you go. I'm almost glad that Kirk Douglas didn't succeed because then we wouldn't have the movie we have now. It would have been something completely different. And I think it's one of those times where it played out for the best.
Well, that'll about do it for us here today at the Visually Hidden Selects podcast. We will be discussing a completely different film next time, so be sure to head over to the YouTube channel and subscribe so you don't miss any future recommendations. You can catch Stephen Bendler on Instagram over at Steve's Pop Culture Corner. Anne and I, of course, are also on Instagram as well as Letterboxd, so you can follow us over there and check out what we've watched and see what we think. And until next time, avoid conformity.
There we go.